Hello, I am Reverend Irene Ford Smith, uh, aka Miss Irene from my Young Peeps. I want to welcome you to Generationally Speaking. Here at the table, every Wednesday at 9:30, we sit down and we discuss life issues. No matter the age, we know that we all go through these issues, and we use the Bible as our final answer and the foundation of everything that we say and do. I am always excited to have my co-hosts with me. I have co-hosts from Gen X, Gen Ys, and Gen Zs and beyond. But then I always have my two faithful co-hosts who are with me every week on this journey of generationally speaking. I'm always excited to introduce Pastor Shamika Latte Oliver, whose mantra is building the best you. She's heading up a women's, she's always building women and her ministry, Women Who Connect Lead. So I'm excited about that. Pastor Shamika, what do you have to say to us today?
I'm just excited to be here another day. I'm excited to hear the impact that our guest has made in the lives that she has touched and changed. So I'm excited to share this with those who are ready to hear and ready to have a transformational experience.
And also, thank you. Also, I have Minister James Durham. Well, for those of you who are Washington football fans, you know we lost the game on, on Sunday by 1 point. But Minister Durham, a Washington, D.C. native, here he is. He is a Dallas Cowboy fan. Uh, Minister Durham, it's always good to have you.
It's always a pleasure to be here, Reverend. And like Shamika said, I'm excited to hear this story. You all buckle your seats. You're going to be blessed by what Angela has to share.
And Minister Durham, he is a mentor to young boys and men of all ages, using the Nehemiah principle to build men. Well, I always have my ears open, and I'm always attentive to the word of the Lord. And when a person, when God takes me to a person and says, invite that person, I'm like, yes. So I met our guest today, Angela Alexander. I met her through Pastor Shamika, and oh my goodness, had an opportunity to read her story, her journey, and God just arrested me and said, this narrative has to be told. And when I read her journey, I thought about Joseph. And Joseph in chapter 50, we see the culmination of everything that he had gone through coming into fruition. And Joseph said, what was meant for evil, God meant for good. Can I tell you that when I read her book, I said, yes, Lord. And so I want to say to our listening audience, what God's plans for you does not mean that it's going to be straight. God plans for you doesn't mean that you're not going to have some bumps in the road. God plans for you starts early. And sometimes it looks like this can't be God, but it's God. And so with that, I want to welcome again Angela Alexander, and she is the author of Miracles in Action. And you need to get that book. It is a wonderful, wonderful read. Um, um, I'm excited about having her here. She talks about turning pain into power and grief into peace. But today, we want her to introduce herself to you, our audience, and let you hear about her formative years. And I'm praying that you'll see the hand of God as she shares with us her formative years. So, Sister Alexander, welcome to Generationally Speaking. We're excited about having you here today and sharing your journey. So, share with us, introduce yourself to us, and share with us your formative years as a young girl growing up.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you all today. And growing up, I'm born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. So I'm from the Midwest, and I'm the seventh out of 8 children.
Wow.
So back in the day, we had big families back there, and my parents had 4 girls, 4 boys. So we grew up, we would have fights, the girls against the boys, or the first born or the first four against the second four. It was all crazy. So we had so many people, and my parents and my grandmother lived with us at times. So we had so many people. It was always something going on.
So as you said, the seventh of eight.
7th of 8, yes.
So is there a large age difference between you and the oldest? How intimate did you know your older siblings?
My oldest sibling, she's exactly 10 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
So almost their step, and my youngest, right under me, she's less than a year, like short from 3 days from a year, younger than me. So we're almost back to back as well.
Okay. So tell us about school for you all there in St. Louis.
We went to we started off going to a Catholic school,
Mm-hmm.
and then I would come home and complain because the nuns would hit our hands with the rulers, and then my mother said that's enough of that, and then she sent us to a public school. But my older sisters, my older siblings, they were into drugs, were smoking and marijuana, and my mother didn't want me and my younger sister to go through that. So she took us out of public school. She took me and my younger sister out of public school and put us into a private school.
Mm-hmm.
And just trying to save us from going down that spiral, because it's like my siblings, they went through school in the front door and out the back. So she said, no, I need to stop this right now. So she put me and my younger sister, Susan, into a private school. And you
all were excellent students at that school.
Yes, we had to be. Yes.
But you seem to excel quite a bit. And so then tell us a little bit about your dad.
My father, he's a hard worker. He was in the military, and out before I was born. He maintained several jobs to feed 8 children. And he always had a moonlighting job where he was either a custodian. He worked for the electric company in the daytime, and in the evening, he had all of us going and cleaning out the offices downtown St. Louis. And I remember my job was to clean out the ashtrays and the trash cans. And the older you were, the more responsibility you had. And then he also had a restaurant. We called it Billy's Walk Up. Where people would just walk up and order their sandwiches. And then he also had, how the ice cream truck used to come around?
Yeah.
But he had where he said tripe sandwiches and rib tip sandwiches and hot links and all that kind of stuff. And it was like the truck just came around town, and man, and all my older siblings, they were old enough to work at his restaurant and on the truck, but I wasn't old enough. But I just got the benefits from being his daughter. So he was always hustling, always working.
Yeah. So your father and so your mom basically with 8 children. I'm pretty sure she just stayed at home. That was full time.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And so now that you and your sister, I think you all were noted for your excellence, and you graduate from high school. Then what do you do?
So after I graduated from high school, by that time, a lot of my siblings had migrated from St. Louis to Seattle, Washington. So once I graduated, Alice was my ace cum boom. She was in Washington State, so I moved to Washington State as well. And I got a job in an accounting office. And on my way to work every day, I used to walk past an Air Force recruiting office. And then on the window, it says, the Air Force Reserve is a great way to serve. And I said, And at that time, my stepfather, my parents had separated and divorced, and my mother had married a man who joined the military. He joined the Navy. And he would go out to sea for 6 months at a time and come back and tell us about all these great adventures he would be a part of, going all over the world. And I was like, wow, I want to do that. And so, but I didn't want to be in the Navy though, okay?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that because I believe you had, was it in high school, was it in elementary school or high school that you noted that you had some problems with your feet? Was that?
Yes. And that became an issue because when I was in high school, well, all my life I had bunions on both of my feet. And I don't know how I got that. I don't know if I just wore hand-me-down shoes and my toes grew the wrong way. Probably that was it, wearing my sibling shoes too long. And and so I joined the Air Force. When I was in, okay, let me go back. So when I walking past the Air Force Reserve, I end up becoming a reservist in the Air Force. And when I was there, they give you these low quarter shoes. I mean, leather tight, they're not giving. And my feet got blisters on both of them. I couldn't walk in them. And the doctor says, you know what you have here? And I said, what? He said, you got yourself a discharge. I was like, oh, no, please, don't discharge me. I didn't even make it past basic training. And he says, no. He says, I just discharged 5 people who have feet worse than yours. And I, please. And he said, I tell you, I'm gonna give you a chance only because you're a reservist. Because the people he discharged were active duty. And he says, okay, so, but he didn't know that I had been on the varsity track team. I had ran in high school, hurdle, all that kind of stuff. And he's telling me that I can't walk. And so, I said, okay.
So when I think about that, Minister Durham, you had a question?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in there because, the book titled Miracles in Action. And one of the early miracles we saw in your life is that you had to wear these corrective shoes. And I want you to share a little bit about that, because you had to wear these corrective shoes and you didn't, you threw them away. And the doctor said you probably won't have issues walking, but you ended up running track. I thought that was amazing. So you can share a little bit about that.
I had these red corrective shoes and they had braces up both sides. And, me and my sister Alice, we were always together. They used to call me her shadow because wherever she was, I was. And she was so embarrassed about these shoes. And one day I was walking through the alley and she said, I'll tell you what, when we walk out of this alley, if you still got these shoes on, you can't walk with me. We left those shoes in the alley and I was gone in the trash can. And we walked in the home and said, where your shoes at? They was gone, man. They was gone. And both of us got in big trouble after that because they were expensive. So, and I just so the doctor told my mom that I would have to have surgery that summer. And there was no guarantee if I'll be able to walk. And my mom just said, you know what? We're just gonna pray, leave this in God's hand. And we did. And I was fine, went on the varsity track team.
But on the varsity track team, your feet, it was still the issue there. So in your mind, what did you do to compensate for that?
My feet never hurt. They were just bunions on both sides. There were just bunions on both feet. And I just wore soft shoes. I couldn't wear heels. I couldn't wear, real tight, narrow shoes. And as long as I had my tennis shoes, I was fine.
Mm-hmm. And so,
yeah, that was their prediction that I couldn't walk, and I never accepted that.
But after running track, did you notice anything about how did you learn how to take care of your feet? Because I'm sure after running there had to be some soreness there, something. So how did you learn how to take care of your feet?
As long as I wore tennis and not any narrow shoes, my feet were fine. It's just when I went to basic training, they gave me those narrow leather shoes that was not giving at all. And that's when I started having blisters on both feet and I couldn't walk. And that's when they said they're gonna put me out of the military because my feet were deformed. And I said, oh, dear Father God. So they let me stay in because I was a reservist.
So what did you say to the doctor to have him to give you the chance? Because most of the time there's no conversation, there's no give. So what did you say to this person?
That I was a reservist. I wasn't on active duty status. And that was the main thing because, I work two days a month. I said, you're not going to put me out of the military over 2 days a month and 2 weeks out of the year. And so, he said, okay. But at the time he said, I don't want you running, because we're supposed to, for our PT, we're supposed to run and do jumping jacks and all that kind of stuff. He says, no running, no jumping. He said, I don't even want you walking in formation. That's with all the other people, that's with my squadron. He said, don't. And I was like, what, really? I said, okay. but the deal was for every mile my squadron ran, I had to walk 2. I had to do double what they did.
Okay.
Walking, so.
Okay, so you were able to stay in the reserve.
Yeah.
And so then after you were in the reserve and you were in Seattle at this time?
Yes.
Okay. And so Where are you working at? I mean, are you in college? What are you doing?
Well, I was working for the accounting office. I graduated from high school. I was working for the accounting office, and I left that to go to basic training.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I came back from basic training, I was going to get another job, probably in accounting again. But that's when I met my husband a week after I got back from basic training.
So let's talk about that. You and Alice, throughout the book, you talk a lot about Alice. So talk to us a little bit about some of the things. When did Alice get married, and was that when did that happen? And I understand her husband was military.
Yes. So I met my husband in '82. Alice got married a year before, and at the time, and when I met my husband, he was actually in Korea for a year. He was in Korea for a year, and so I'm really like, so it's like me and Alice living together in Tacoma, Washington. It's a military base. It's an Army base and an Air Force base, and Alice and I, we had went out because I was the designated driver for everybody, and so we went out to the NCO club, and my husband to be, he was I'm sorry, the dog just came in here. He was sitting at a table by himself, and he looked over and he asked my sister to dance. And then they got on the dance floor, and while he's asking her to dance, he was asking questions about me. And so finally, he came over and he asked. He said his first line to me was, "Would you watch my drink? I have to go to the bathroom." And that's because the club was so crowded. If you got and left your table, they cleared away for somebody else to sit there. And so he came back, and we danced and we talked, and that's how we met at the NCO club at Fort Lewis, Washington.
But you and Alice you all lived together?
At that time, when I came back from basic training, I moved in with her, and at that time, her husband is in Korea. So we did everything together. Mm-hmm. We were musketeers. And then when Siri joined us, when you saw one of us, you saw three of us. We were always together. And matter of fact, when he asked me out, and I said, listen, ain't no mister gonna come between me and my sister. So if you want to take me out, you have to take my sister out too. And so he said, whatever it takes, I'll take you both out. So the three of us went out on our first date together.
So I know the audience is asking, were you able to wear heels at the time?
And I still don't wear heels, have no interest in wearing heels. Never, never, never. I'm flat foot. No.
So tell us now, you see your husband, this person, you meet this person,
mm-hmm.
but there's things you don't know about him.
Yes.
Talk to us about that.
So when I met him, we were 20 years old, and at the time I truly looked like I was like 15, 16 years old. And he was like, how old are you? Are you old enough to be here? And I said, yes, I'm old enough to be here. And he said, show me some ID, because he didn't believe it. So I showed him my ID card, and at that he started busting up laughing. I said, what's so funny? He said, because you're older than me. And I turned out to be 2 days older than my husband. So I always took him out to respect your elders. But then what also happened was he had a ring he had an arm ring on his wedding finger. And I was like, are you married? And he says, no, I'm not married. I said, then why do you have that ring on your wedding finger? He said, oh, it's the only finger it fits. And I was like, really now? And so a couple of months later, I found out that he actually was married. And at the time, his wife was in Miami, Florida at the time. So that was a big hiccup in our relationship.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yes.
What did Alice think about that?
Oh my goodness. She cussed him out from one aisle down the other. I'm telling you what, she left no syllable unturned. And because, she had fallen in love with him. We were together all the time, but he was scared. He was scared to tell us because he knew He knew the type of person I was. I'm not a home wrecker. I'm not a home breaker. I'm not coming between you and your relationship. That's not what I do. That's not who I am. And you can't have me and a chick on the side. I don't run like that. And so that's why he was scared to tell us. But when he finally told us, we actually broke up. Because
So how long did you all date before you really found out?
August, probably like 2 months before I found out that he was married.
And then once you found out that he was married and you all broke up, was he stationed there in Seattle or
Yes.
Tacoma, I think?
Yes, he was stationed in Tacoma, Washington, in Fort Lewis Army Base.
So then did he after you all broke up, did he go back to I mean, what did you do? I mean, here you are when you fall in love with someone,
right,
and you think, you know, God, I know I want somebody to come into my life,
right,
and I'm waiting for that person. And then the person comes and you think this is the person, but then you find out that no, he's already spoken for.
exactly.
And like you said, your thought was, I'm not a home wrecker.
Right.
And I can imagine, seeing your parents divorce is not something that you would want to ever be a part of that.
Right.
So you go your way.
Yeah.
And he goes his way.
Yeah.
Do you give him any ultimatum as he's leaving, or you just say that's it?
I told him, I said, you know what, you can't, like, people tell me, like, well, I'm gonna wait, I just need to wait to a perfect time to tell my wife about you. I said, no, I'm not gonna play that game. You're not gonna wait a perfect time. Either you tell her or you don't. Either we're together or we're not. And that don't mean, oh, I need to wait, for the perfect time, you're not gonna string me along while you waiting for the perfect time to tell your wife that you're in love with somebody else. And with Suri, he had only been married, and he hadn't been married 1 year when we met. He had got married under false pretense, and that's, this is the backstory. He was on leave from military, and some people got him drunk, and they ended up marrying this girl, and so he wasn't in love with her. That's not where his heart was.
Yeah,
because, and so, long story short, they got a divorce and we got married.
Yeah, because when you hear that, that he was married to somebody, and that you give him an ultimatum, and even though you're saying, I don't want to be this, but giving a person an ultimatum is saying, if you want to be with me, which means that the relationship has to end with somebody else. And so my question is, did he ever say why he came to Tacoma by himself and not with the young woman?
Well, I'm trying not to say too much about her.
Right.
But she wanted to stay home.
Okay. So so now that you all have it's been a couple of months and you haven't heard from Suri, and you're sort of starting to get back into some normalcy, life without him, no longer the three musketeers, we're back to the two musketeers. And so I'm sure that in that time you thought about him, but you also realized what it's not meant for me. And so how much longer was it before you heard from him again?
Oh, it wasn't long. He talked to his wife, and they realized that it wasn't meant between. It wasn't meant. She realized that his heart wasn't there, and so they decided that she stayed in Miami, went back to Miami, and so we moved forward with our relationship. Okay. And they got the divorce, and then we got married.
Yeah. Now, in that, I understand that he did have a child, though.
Yes. So they had a child.
Right. So what do you do with that situation with the baby and everything? How do you all navigate that? Because sometimes we read books, or we tell our stories, and sometimes we can make it so crisp that people sometimes don't understand it, that it's not like that, that there was pain, there was tears, there was being
Anger.
distraught, you know, and you have a child involved, and it's a lot. It's not just, oh, we know we lived happily ever after, because we still have this child that's always there.
Yes. Well, with Siri, he got orders right after that. He got orders to Germany,
Hmm.
and so that took him away from everybody. And so he had a long distance relationship with me. He had a long distance relationship with his child, and then eventually I went to Germany to meet up with Suri. And once their divorce was completed, that's when we got married over in Europe.
Okay. Okay. So, man, Minister Durham, wow. So, it's before Pastor Shamika, you have anything you want to ask before I move on?
Well, I just like what you had mentioned, though, just to really, sometimes you want to hear the back end of the story. I mean, we can talk about, like you said, you can talk about miracles all day, but then even up to the point, the things that build you to the miracle, the things that allows you to really see God in the midst of all of it, how God has allowed you to just experience little tidbits of what pain feels like. So sometimes when the enemy comes in like a flood and he hits you hard, you begin to remember, and I don't know if this was you, Angela, but you began to remember the small things that were still big that God brought you through, which really, when you go through something tumultuous, you begin to say, okay, God brought me through this. He brought you through love. And then in the midst of love, it was pain, because you didn't know if you were going to get that love. You had to still fight for yourself. So in this time, and I'm seeing, even before we get to more of your story, you had to learn to love yourself. You had to learn to pray. You had to learn to fight. You had to learn to lose, some things along the way. So if it says the evil day will come, in Galatians 6. So when you do know that you're not fighting against a person, but principalities and wickedness in high places that you don't see. And so I think that it's very important that we do talk about this part, and we let the audience know that, that journey and the small things that still are big that you experience prepares you to be able to put on your full armor of God, and to also to be able to stand. Meaning to stand by faith and stand on the belief that if God did this for me, I'm not going to despise small beginnings, that he is going to do this other thing for me also.
Amen. And I think that's what we want to leave the audience, is that, Sister Alexandra was faithful in her posture to wait on the Lord. She was faithful in her posture for God to open the door. She wasn't going to try to open the door. She sent him away. And if the door was going to be open, it was going to be God that opened the door. And I think that's where we want to leave. You don't open the door, but you wait on God to open the door. And if God opens the door, then you know that you're okay to walk through.